Alarm sounds are designed to automatically increase arousal as well as focus and sense of urgency in order for the organism to more effectively react to danger. Alarm sounds are evolutionary sounds in that they share similar structure across many different species. Alarm sounds have regular valve-like structure where the regularity appear on the image of sound as long, dark bands. The longer or higher the pitch, or the more air released, the more intense the quality of the alarm sound. So for instance, when the danger or pain is low, the alarm sound would sound like ah, and when that danger becomes high, then it would sound more like ah. So there is this range of intensity of alarm sounds depending on the perceived danger or distress. In this diagram, we have images of different animals, and next to these images, we have pictures or spectrograms of the alarm sounds that these animals produce. So we have a monkey with the picture of the alarm sounds next to it. Then we have a rat with the picture of alarm sounds. And we also have the bird with the picture of an alarm sound next to it. And we can see that the pictures have these dark bands, each one of them. And these are called formants. And alarm sounds in nature are usually expressed in this type of structure. On the right side of the diagram, we have a baby screaming, and it has the spectrogram. And again, we have these long dark bands of the scream. And then we have a human pronouncing a diphthong, which is an alarm sound. And in the diphthong, we see 3 of those dark bands or formants. So let us now listen to the alarm sounds as produced by the animals. And the first one is the alarm sounds produced by a monkey. Now let's listen to the alarm or distress call of a bird, and in this case the parrot. Now let's listen to the cry of a baby, which is a form of distress or alarm call. And let's see the similarity between the baby as distress sound and the parrot distress sound. Finally, we have the A sound from the human language, and this sound has the characteristics of an alarm sound as it contains these long dark bands, as is the case in animal sounds. What is interesting about human speech and what differentiates us from other animals is that while the archaic alarm sounds and aggression sounds are still automatically picked up by the reptilian core and to some extent by the limbic system, the meaning of the word is picked up by the neocortex, which is the intelligent part of the brain. These alarm or distress sounds produced by animals are automatically perceived by the reptilian core, as they are hardwired into this early brain structure. They serve a survival function, and apparently they date back over 400 million years to the times of the dinosaurs. So the same structure of the sound is produced and perceived by a vast number of animals on the evolutionary scale. This reptilian core with the spine forms the automatic functions of the organisms. And here it's visible when human embryo is formed, where the earlier structure of the embryo appears like the reptilian core. So alarm sounds and other sounds like aggression are automatic and in nature, and they are produced by animals that live on land and as well as in water. So let's take a look at how alarm sounds can exist in languages. The first thing to note is that human speech is produced within pulses of air, usually when we exhale. And it is within these pulses of air that alarm sounds are produced. Humans are able to produce complex combinations of sounds. This occurs when the airflow from the lungs goes through the voice box, causing vocal cords to vibrate and creating sound. This sound is then shaped into unique sounds by the muscles that control tongue, lips, and soft palate. Some of these sounds, when produced, appear as dark bands or formants. And as mentioned earlier, evolutionary alarm sounds contain these dark bands or formants. Now in speech, the sounds that contain these dark bands include vowels, for instance, I, E, A, O, U. Diphthongs, for instance, I, Au, Oi. Semivowels or glides, such as Y and W. Nasal sounds, such as M, N, or Eng. And lateral sounds, like L. And it is within these sounds or combinations of these sounds that we find alarm sounds. The most basic alarm sound in languages is the long vowel. Here we have an example of two words, tu and tu. In the first word tu, the U is short and is not an alarm sound. As this U becomes longer, there is a biological trigger where the U triggers an alarm cognition in the reptilian core. This trigger of perception and cognition is automatic. The higher the danger, the lower the trigger point for the perception and cognition of the alarm sound. So the long U in natural environment constitutes a mild to moderate alarm sound. The most common way that languages create long vowels is by firstly creating a distinction between short and long vowels, where the length determines the meaning of the word. For instance, in English we have the word sheep and sheep. The word sheep stands for a form of a boat, and in the word sheep the E is short and is not an alarm sound, while the word sheep stands for an animal and the E sound is long, and that is an alarm sound. And this alarm sound obviously stimulates the earlier brain structures as an alarm sound. Another example is the word in Latin anus, meaning old woman, and then we have anus, meaning anus, and the anus, the A in the anus, is an alarm sound. The other way that long vowels are created in languages is by adding tones or pitch to the vowels within the syllables. And for instance, this occurs in tonal Asiatic languages such as Chinese, where, for instance, we have the word ma, and the a has a high tone, and it means mom. And then we have another ma, where the tone is rising, a, and that word means hemp. So in this case, virtually almost all vowels are long because they almost in all cases have a tone assigned to it. The second way alarm sounds occur is through combination of valve-like sounds. And these valve-like sounds again are valves, lateral sounds like L, nasal sounds like M, N or Ng, and glides or approximants such as Y, W or R. The first combination is the combination of valve sounds within a single pulse of air, and that is called diphthong. And here we have a number of examples of diphthongs, which include ow, I, oi, eo, a, o, u. And on the left side, we have the example word by, and in that word, the I is the diphthong, and that is the alarm sound. And in the diagram below, we can see the formants or the dark bands representing the I. And we have the image of the brain, and this I sound is picked up by the reptilian core as an alarm sound. The second combination of valve-like sounds which forms alarm sounds include valve sounds followed by nasal sounds, or valve sounds followed by lateral or approximant finals. And in this case, we have the example of king, and in this example, the in is the alarm sound. And we also have another example, call, and in this case, the all is the alarm sound. And on the left-hand side, we have the word yell, and in this case, the whole word has a combination of valve-like sounds, and so the whole word is an alarm sound, and below it you can see the dark band or the formants, and again this sound is picked up by the early brain structures or the reptilian core as an alarm sound. Interestingly, this valve followed by nasal combination is the most common type of alarm sounds that exist in most, if not all, languages in the world. There are many other combinations of valve-like sounds which create alarm sounds, and some of those are listed here, and they include diphthongs followed by nasals or lateral finals. And the examples here are lane, and we have the ain as the alarm sound, or we have the word coin, and in this case oin is the alarm sounds. And these alarm sounds are already moderate to highly intense alarm sounds because they are longer. They are made of three valve-like sounds with formants in them. Then we have glides followed by valves or diphthongs, plus at the end of the syllable we have nasals or laterals. So in this case we have the word swine, and the alarm sound is whine. And in this case we have 4 valve-like sounds within one pass of air or within one syllable. And again, this is higher intensity alarm sound than, let's say, a diphthong or a valve followed by a nasal. So far, we have discussed alarm sounds as they occur due to the valve length and combinations of the valve-like sounds which contain formants or dark bands on the image of the sound. Now, these alarm sounds can have the intensity of its quality further increased. One such factor that can increase the intensity of alarm sounds is adding tones, pitch, or stress to the already existing alarm sounds. There are a number of languages that utilized or are utilizing tones, pitch, or stress to further increase the intensity of the already existing alarm sounds. Chinese Mandarin, as well as other Chinese tonal languages such as Cantonese and Hokkien, and we can add the Vietnamese language to this group, utilize differences in tone to distinguish the meaning between words. And these tones, which fall on already existing alarm sounds, further increase the intensity of these alarm sounds. So, for example, in Mandarin Chinese, we have the word Shanghai, and English or foreign speakers would just say Shanghai. But in Chinese Mandarin, we have 2 tones. On the first R sound, we have the falling tone, and on the second R sound, we have the falling rising tone. And these tones force the speaker of the language to pronounce those sounds slightly longer and with more intensity or pitch as you have to make the tones. So the speaker is forced to change the pitch. And this causes the language to contain more or highly intense alarm sounds. And in that regard, Chinese Mandarin is perhaps the most intense alarm language in the world. Not only in terms of intensity, but frequency of the occurrence of alarm sounds, where almost all syllables contain alarm sounds. Ancient Greek is another language that utilized tones or pitch to distinguish between meaning of words. In ancient Greek, this feature was more often used for grammatical purposes. So, for example, we have the word oikoi, where the first E is rising, and this word means at home. And then we have oikoi, where the first E sound has a rising and falling pitch or tone. What is interesting about ancient Greek is that the tone or pitch falls on the second valve in the diphthong. And this is quite unique in terms of languages, and in some unique way it creates a highly intense alarm sounds not found in most other languages, and perhaps the only language that utilizes this to a lesser degree was Latin. In summary, ancient Greek was a very complex language. It required a high level of education for its citizens in order to be able to speak the language correctly. It was a language which contained many intense alarm sounds, many moderate alarm sounds, many sounds without alarm, and it was highly rhythmical and melodic language. it was a highly inspirational and motivational language that allowed the Greeks to be highly inquisitive, creative, and innovative. Then we have classical Latin, which uses a little bit of pitch the way that ancient Greek used it, however to a much lesser extent. It also uses stress the way ancient Greek also used stress. And here is an example of words in Latin where the stress further increases the alarm quality of an alarm sound. The example is de stringo, meaning I unite, and the accent falls on in, increasing the intensity of the alarm sound. So the Romans would pronounce it de stringo, where the in is produced more intensely or in a higher pitch. Classical Latin had a stress or accent rule where every word contained a stress. Thus, every time an accent fell on an alarm sound, it increased its intensity. Finally, we come to the Japanese language. And this language has a unique way of creating alarm sounds and increasing the intensity of these alarm sounds. This language is structured according to what is called a mora, or a sound unit. And these sound units do not correspond to a syllable or pulse of air. So you can have one mora within a syllable, or you can have a number of moras within one syllable or one pulse of air. So what happens in terms of alarm quality or occurrence of alarm sounds in Japanese, the speaker will produce a running pulse of air or one type of sound, let's say oh, and within that one pulse oh, they will create little syllables or sounds. So and so you have this one pulse of air, and within that you have a number of those little moras, but it's only one pulse of air. And this is done across a pitch pattern. There is something like 5 pitch patterns, and you have a high and low pitch. So in Japanese, you're not looking for the long vowel sounds within the moras, but actually what is the very intense alarm sound is that one pulse of steady air. Oh, is that oh that keeps going through one long pulse of air. That is the foundation of this language alarm or distress quality. What allows for this long pulse of air, static, is the structure of the pitch accent or the 5 pitch patterns that they have. Without those 5 pitch patterns, Japanese would have collapsed as a language in terms of being an alarm or highly alarmed language. Additionally, Japanese contains long valve mora that goes across 2 moras on some occasions, and that further increases its alarm quality. So, for example, you have the word sujin, meaning husband, and then you have sujin, meaning prisoner. So you have this su, and that is a highly intense alarm sound that goes across 2 moras within that language. Another method or factor that can increase the intensity of the already existing alarm sounds is to surround them, these alarm sounds, by consonants or consonantal clusters which require a lot of air to be produced. So a lot of those sounds are fricatives or affricates. So when an alarm sound is surrounded by initial or final consonant or consonantal clusters, the intensity of the alarm sound is increased. This increase in the intensity of the alarm sound is due to the speaker being forced to save air to be able to produce the long syllable in one pass of air. The speaker cannot save much air on the consonants as they require a set amount of air to be produced. However, with valve-like sounds, the speaker can raise the pitch and as such save air. And this occurs naturally in native speakers of languages which contain intense alarm sounds, such as German. In classical Latin, this also most likely was the case. So, for instance, I is an alarm sound, and then you have 5, which is an intense alarm sound. The 5, the I is produced in a higher pitch because you have the F initial and the V final. So you have 5. The I is I, and the 5, the I in the 5 has a higher pitch. The final note on the Asiatic tonal and pitch languages is that because China, Japan, Korea, and Vietnam speak these extremely intense alarm languages, these societies became highly focused with extremely high sense of urgency when confronted with danger or something that they consider important or serious to survival. This can be observed in their almost fanatical focus on studies, savings, and their focus on manufacturing. You can see this fear when they compete. For example, there was a tennis match between 2 Chinese players, and the fear and extreme focus was visible on their faces. We can see the alarm sounds in the names of these 2 Chinese tennis players. We can even tell from the names that this language contains intense alarm sounds. One of the lady tennis player is called Yang Qin Wen. In the surname Yang, the Ng is constructed of 2 sounds with formants or those dark bands. And already that constitutes an alarm sound. And then there is the falling tone on the air sound, increasing the intensity of that alarm sound. Further, there is this initial zh fricative that requires a lot of air to be released during its production, causing the speaker to increase the overall pitch of the following ng in order to preserve air, thus further increasing the already intense alarm sound. Qin Wen also contains 2 intense alarm sounds. We have Qin, and again we have 2 vowels there in the sound in, creating an alarm sound, and then the E has high tone, further increasing the intensity of that alarm sound as the E sound is longer and is produced at a higher tone. Finally, it has an affricate ts at the front of the syllable, causing the speaker to increase the overall pitch of the following in order to preserve air, thus further increasing the already intense alarm sound. The second syllable is when, where there are three sounds with vowel-like qualities. And this is automatically a slightly intense alarm sound as it is longer. And the rising tone further increases the alarm quality. The second lady tennis player's name is Wang Ya-Fang, and that name also has intense alarm sounds that are constructed in a similar manner. This high focus of Chinese-based societies is not a result of culture. Rather, it is caused by the intense alarm sounds within their languages. Once a society has high focus and a high sense of urgency, a specific culture and philosophy then develops around that mental state. If one would take the tones or the pitch patterns out of those languages, the alarm quality within those languages would mostly collapse. And their behavior would be more reminiscent to that of people from Indonesia, Malaysia, Philippines, or Mongolia. They would be more similar to virtually every other society on Earth, as there is no other part of the world which uses this kind of extreme alarm sounds that exist in almost every syllable of the language. If you would like to investigate this idea a little bit more closely, please check one of my book versions on the topic. Evolutionary Alarm Sounds Within Languages is the first version. Frighten the World into Prosperity is the second version. Motivate Poor Countries to Develop is the third version.
Ice cream, open your mind, open your heart, open your wallet, open your pocket, free Wi-Fi, 1 month free, we accept credit card. Hello, is it me you're looking for?